South Africa has officially been removed from the Financial Action Task Force grey list. The global anti-money laundering and terror financing watchdog confirmed on Friday. SA and Nigeria landed on the grey list in February 2023. Now, for more, we are joined by Zwelakhe Mnguni, who's the Executive Director at Benguela Global Fund Managers. Zwelakhe, a very good evening to you. A significant milestone for South Africa that the South African government has also welcomed, I see.
Yeah, indeed. I think congratulations to the Treasury and the SARB, the Reserve Bank. I think a lot of effort has been put in place and regulations put in place to essentially guide the process and introduce reforms. So it is a positive step, and I think it would be beneficial to South Africa in a number of ways, one of which would be the lower cost of funding. I mean, the South African government pays quite a substantial amount of money in interest expenses. And when you are grey listed, your cost of funding becomes a little higher. So that we could see that as a first relief. But more importantly, I mean, we would see from case studies in other countries that have been removed from the grey listing, we would see that the foreign direct investment starts to improve. So the allocation of money to a country that has been removed from the grey listing seems to improve, as many investors have now no hurdle of investing in their country. So I think it's a positive, it's going to have a positive impact both at the government level, but also at the economy broadly at that level as well.
And speaking about those investors as well, having that positive impact to getting these good news, what will it mean in terms of investment in South Africa?
Yeah, I mean, if you look, for example, in 2024, South Africa and Nigeria, which are the two countries, and I think Mozambique and Burkina Faso, they've all been removed from that grey listing. But I think if you look at South Africa and Nigeria, they probably got about $45 billion in foreign direct investments out of $1.5 trillion of foreign direct investment globally. So I think if we get, now that we are removed and there could be scope for allocations like in countries like Turkey, United Arab Emirates, that saw some of them saw 10 times increase in their foreign direct investment. So the potential is there, and the benefit is that when you start getting investment, you are able to then maybe put infrastructure on the ground that creates jobs, but also that sustains jobs because now you have infrastructure that is producing on the ground. So it could be quite beneficial. By some estimates is that the impact of the grey listing took about 0.5% of GDP growth. So we should see that coming back at least in the next 12 to 18 months in our numbers.
Yeah, and as you're speaking about investment into infrastructure as well, for instance, that could be used and also could create jobs. Quite often we hear from government saying that, infrastructure is not being maintained properly. Should money like this kind of investment also then be able to be used to maintain that infrastructure and not to bring you into a political sphere here and now? I mean, how trustworthy are our officials that that money, that investment that will come from such good news will actually land on the ground, for instance, with maintenance of infrastructure?
Yeah, I'm probably a bit conflicted as well in that some of that money could be channeled through private equity funds in the investment management industry, and primarily because they can then identify projects that are clean and able to be executed. I mean, the government's ability to get money for infrastructure is probably through loans and making the environment favorable to investors to invest in infrastructure. So I think there is a concern. I mean, I think what is coming out of the Majanga Commission is actually quite frightening. The involvement of some of the key individuals in the system. So I think channeling it through a channel that has got checks and balances, like I say, I mean, the likes of private equity, where there's accountability clear cut to the investors, I think it might help. But I think broadly speaking, there might also be opportunities for companies that want to invest directly on the ground. So if they want to invest in a mine and they were being blocked by their country or their regulator that they can't invest in a grey-listed country, they can now do some of those things. So I think generally it will probably be positive and will clear a lot of hurdles for investment for our country.
Yeah, and just finally, even in government statement welcoming this decision as well, they also acknowledge that there's still a long way to go in terms of strengthening our economy, and this is just only but a step in the right direction. In your wise opinion, what else needs to be done to ensure that we receive these kinds of news that will boost our economy?
I think one of the biggest challenges and frustrating challenges is that we don't have state capacity to execute projects and do so with integrity and without all this drama that we are seeing of corruption. So we need to see a clear effort going towards improving that element, that private-public partnerships that could drive implementation and delivery so that we see actual outcomes from the infrastructure and investment that is happening on the ground. I think it would encourage a lot of money that is sitting in money market from companies to be actually released into investment. There's a lot of companies that have money, but they are not investing because there's uncertainty and there's also concerns around reforms, whether these reforms will be implemented or not. So I do think that if we can see a big turning point, which I think this might be, where we see a big turning point around corruption and the rule of law, I think we might see positive flow through from the investments as a result.
Yeah, let's hope that this is that big turning point, as you've coined it now. Zwelakhe, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Really appreciate it.